Hi, hello guys. This is Chris from Chris Tech DevOps. For today's session, we're going to discuss about the MySQL Server Database Container, which is having a persistent data. That means once the container dies or is being shut down, so we still wanted to use the data that is being stored on the MySQL Server database. So as you can see, this is what we're going to achieve. So let's say we have our machine host, which is hosting our container. So as usual, we have our application, which is on another container. And once it talks to the database, it is actually storing some data on this MySQL Server Container. Let's say this is our data. And in the event that we wanted to bring down this MySQL Server database, right? Let's say we need to bring this down, sorry, bring this down. We wanted to maintain the database and keep it for another container use. Let's say we're going to fire up another MySQL Server database. This time we call it MySQL Server 2 container. We want to make sure that we can still use this database because this database has our own data, important data that is being stored. So once this one is up, we're going to put our database, and the MySQL Server 2 container should be able to see our the content of our database. So let's try to see that in action. So guys, if you want to follow along with me, my code is actually available on my GitHub repository. So we'll try to clone from there to see this in action. Sorry. So we gonna clone it from here. Right, so it seems like we have successfully cloned it. Okay, before we're going to run, let's try to open what is inside in the on this repository. So we can use any of our favorite text editor. All right, let's try to open that folder that we just have downloaded, which is actually on C. And yep, this is the folder. So let's try to see this file. So as you see, we have our web server. We created this container, and once we create this container, is just that we build from this file, Docker file that I created. So the content of this is nothing but from this image that I have created. So this image is actually Nginx web, server with a PHP installed, and it will just copy our source code, which is on this folder. So this is nothing but a list of PHP files, and its components as in required. So if we ask the content for this is just a simple PHP app showing the IP address of the container. See, IP address of the container, and it's showing the port that is being used. And eventually, it will also show what is the content of the database, particularly on the users DB database. So this one currently doesn't exist yet. Let's try to go back to that later. So we created that web server container. We want to map it to this port, and this is our database container, MySQL Server. Again, we want it to be built from this Docker file. So this is nothing but using from this image, and we want the password to be my password, right? For that database container. So this is where the part, as you can see, this is how we map. So whoever is running the Docker compose command, So that machine would actually will have created a folder called server database. As you can see on this folder structure, once once we run docker compose up, we can see here later on that there is a server database folder that will automatically be created, and that is actually being mapped on the MySQL Server Container, which is inside the container on this directory slash vars slash lib and slash MySQL. And as usual, if we want to access the MySQL database from outside the machine or the host machine, we will still use port 3306. You can use any port if you want to. And the reason that I wanted to have another container, actually this is not on the diagram, but I just wanted to have this container for me to create table, import the data. So yeah, we get it from an image directly from PHP my admin, and this would be dependent on this server. That would actually mean that build this container once this is ready, right? So yeah, I'm going to assign the database, open this one on my PHP my admin, and I'm gonna access this container via port 8080. All right, so let's try to see that in action. We just want to make sure nothing is here. All right, Docker compose. Sorry, Docker ps to say nothing is running. Docker compose up. It's going to build it. So let's try to see if our containers is up. So it's been up by a minute. So we have 3 containers, 1, 2, 3 running. So let's try to access on our front end first. So this is localhost. We access it via port 4888, right? Yeah, this is the port. Right, so this is showing the IP address of our container. And right now, let's say we don't have anything yet. Let's try to access on the PHP main admin and see the database. Just import 8080. Right, so we're gonna access the MySQL server and we have to use the my password. Right, so our database is everything is on default. Say we're going to input some of the data and make some changes. So let's say in this case we're going to create another database with this users db. So this file is actually we can import data for this database using a file that is being downloaded as well from the clone. So we're going to use this database to input. These are just a series of uh, commands, SQL commands, and insert some this sample data. So it's gonna use that. Users DB. Let's just try to put some data on our database. right? So we have some data, and let's try to see if we can see that. Yep, here we are. So we can see the data from this container. So what's next for us is we need to bring down the containers or delete the containers, right? So these are the containers running. So what we need to do is to bring this down, all docker compose down, right? So there shouldn't be any data, or everything should be down, right? So nothing is accessible at this moment. All right, great. So okay, let's see what actually happened was we have stored everything on this folder, whereby this is actually stored on our host machine. In this case, it is stored on my local laptop because it is where I'm running the Docker Compose file. So as you can see, the content, everything, this is the content library for the varlib MySQL. Right. So what we need to do right now is we're going to fire up another container set of containers. But this time I'm gonna use a different MySQL server. Let's say I'm gonna name this one MySQL Server 2, right? And yep, this PHP admin should be dependent on MySQL Server 2 as well. The host for this PHP, okay, let's just try to see that he should be depending on this MySQL server. So actually, you can look at this and treat this one as the server name, right, of the container. Going to save that, and of course the application itself, we have to make sure that it's able to connect to that MySQL server database, which is this time we call it MySQL Server 2, right? So let's try to see that. But we expect this time once this containers is up, right, from the drawing, once this container is up, right, this he should be able to connect this time with this container and with this database. And we expect that since we added some and imported some of the data, which is the users DB uh, database, we should be able to see that on this container. Try to see. All right, so I think that's much we have to change with the application. All right, what else? Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. All right, so let's try to fire it up again. Close. I have to beat it again. So let's try to see. Okay, let's try to see if our container is up. So, yes. Yep, it was up by 20 seconds. Let's try to access the site again. Okay, so let's try to access the front page. And yes, as you can see, it automatically connected to the database, but this time it has data already that we have just imported. So yeah, our container is able to connect with the new MySQL Server database, which is in this case is the MySQL Server 2. You can see it from here. Uh, yep, it connected in the MySQL Server 2. All right, so I think that's all we can see. So actually, where is this data being mapped is actually on our machine host, which is the reason why, because we have this folder which is actually mapped on the machine host. So your machine host could be a Linux server, usually hosting Docker containers. All right, so please, if you want to be updated with more DevOps tutorials, yeah, please subscribe. Thank you.